Today I'm chatting with Cassidy Eisenfeld, a certified baby-wearing educator, outdoor lover, and mom of 4. We get into all the good stuff, the different types of carriers out there, how to make sure that your baby is in a safe and supportive position, especially for their long-term hip health, and how baby-wearing can help everything from breastfeeding to toddler and kid emotional regulating. We don't dive deep into hiking specific packs, but Cassidy shares a really helpful mindset around getting outside without needing fancy gear, the pros and cons of keeping it simple. If you've got a new baby and want to understand your carrier options, or if you've tried baby wearing and your kiddo just isn't really into it, this conversation is full of insight, encouragement, and a lot of practical tips to help you learn what it's all about from a mom who does it all the time. Welcome to Let's Go Outside, a podcast bringing moms together to chat about the raw, unfiltered reality of doing the exploring we love after having kids. No matter your comfort level of adventuring with the little ones, this is a space to have honest conversations about the real struggles of getting out the door with the kiddos. I'm Danica, a mama living in a small mountain town who's totally obsessed with healthy food and taking my kids outside every single day. I professionally guided backpacking trips in the Canadian Rockies, and I'm certified as a Leave No Trace instructor. On the show, you'll hear real experiences from other moms, plus tips on gear, trail snacks, and the best practices in the wilderness. Whether it's hiking, camping, backpacking, skiing, or traveling the world you want to do more of, this is your place to learn, find encouragement, and strip away any comparison. Come embrace both motherhood and the outdoors. Stick around. This is your place. Welcome to the Outdoor Mom Club. Welcome to the Let's Go Outside podcast. I'm so excited to welcome Cassidy Eisenfeld to the show today. She is a wealth of knowledge, everything to do with baby wearing, breastfeeding, raising her children. So I'm so excited to talk to you, Cassidy.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you too.
Yeah. Give us the inside scoop. Tell us about yourself, your family. If you would like to share what adventures you love to do before you had kids and kind of what it looks like these days going outside with the kids, I'd love to hear about it.
So I'm Cassidy, and we live in the Pacific Northwest, and there's a lot of active people out here. My husband and I actually were very active together. It's kind of how we met. So we did a lot of hiking and camping and stuff like that. And then when we went, to having kids and stuff, I was like, well, I definitely want this to continue. And I didn't really know how, but I had baby worn before with as a nanny. And I remember just that feeling of I can put the baby in the carrier and just walk wherever I want to. And so that was my thing. I was like, I'm going to get these carriers down so that I can take my baby and we can go do what I want to do, because I do not do well sitting down and just sitting there. And so I was like, we have to be able to go. So I kind of use that as like a springboard into everything we do now. But it was, just that goal of like, I want to be able to hike and I want to be able to eventually be backpacking and stuff with kids. And it was kind of just like if I can get the baby in a carrier and walk out the door, that was like my goal, my springboard to like actually doing what we love.
Yes. So have you done backpacking with your kids?
Yeah. When I had 3, my sister and I actually, my first backpacking trip with kids was with 3 kids by myself. Well, so my 3 kids and just me, and then my sister and her 2. And we had a baby like under a year to, I think our oldest was, so we had a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old. So no, 4-year-old. Yeah. So we had 5 kids, like 4 and under, and we were just did it. We're like, it was a like almost 4-mile hike in straight up, and it was intense. And it was intense, but it was like the most beautiful thing I've ever done. I can't wait to go do it again. But it was definitely a go from, hiking with my kids to, okay, I have 3 little kids. My sister has 2 little kids. Let's just make it happen.
That's incredible. Oh, I love that. But that's something that you did do before you had kids, before you were a mom?
I did with my family growing up. My husband and I never really backpacked as much. We wanted to. He had separately, I had separately, but we were both very busy I was a flight attendant and he was a pilot. And so we had like day trip camping and like overnight, like quick overnights, but that was about it. So it had been probably 15 years since I had backpacked specifically when my sister and I were like, we're making this happen.
That's amazing. I love that you started baby wearing as a nanny. That's so cool.
Yeah. It was wonderful to have that experience before having kids because it helped to take a little bit of the confusion out of it.
And then what did you start with when you had your first child for baby wearing?
So actually the family that I had baby worn for, it was a friend of they developed into a friend, and I got her hand-me-down ergo. It was a classic ergo with the insert, their little organic original one, and a Moby wrap, like the old style Moby wrap, which is a lot thicker than the newer ones. So those were my two first carriers, and yeah, I just put her in there like every day from the time I got home from the hospital. So.
That's amazing. We'd love to jump in on this podcast today to different, just like an overview of baby wearing and your expertise sharing with other moms and that would like to do more of it or get into it or just know the ins and outs of it a bit more. I was wondering if you would start with sharing what you found the benefits to be.
So honestly, when I first started, the benefit was just convenience. I just needed that convenience factor. And I also had a reflux baby who needed to stay upright all the time. So those were two benefits. It kept my baby upright and it was super convenient to be able to go anywhere. But as I've continued doing more and more, I've learned the side of it from, emotional regulation, like hip development and all these other pieces that kind of come along with baby wearing. And it's been an amazing tool, and I have kids with sensory needs, and it's been an option for us even when they were having certain challenges around whether it's in social anxiety or meltdowns, different things like that. It was a tool to help them feel more comfortable and confident and get to a place where they were regulated and able to deal with the stress of life.
That's really cool. So do you still wear all your children or have some of them kind of grown out of that? Where are you at?
So my oldest is 7, and I have maybe twice in the past year, and my 5-year-old too. So I ended up with my pregnancy, the 4th pregnancy, I was kind of on modified bed rest and couldn't do much, and I couldn't lift them at all. So it went from using it as a tool with them a little bit more frequently to can't use it at all. So it's not something I use as a tool with them much anymore. More, I use it as a hey, do you mind if we do a video for someone to show what would fit an 6, 7, 5, whatever year old, because there are kids with disabilities or other reasons that they need to be carried, whether it's physical or mental, and it is helpful to be able to see other kids actually being carried that are that age and what the options are. So that's the primary usage. We've used it a small handful of times just as sort of an emotional regulation tool when, they need closeness, but being on the front or hugging them or anything like that is just too much and they can't handle that. So I'll be like, okay, do you want to just go on my back for a minute? And they're like, yes. So sometimes we use it for that, but it's gotten more and more rare as, I think that pregnancy really took it out of me, and it's been kind of a slow build up and we just lost that as a tool for a while, but I do every once in a while, kind of rare.
Okay. So what does it look like for you these days for baby wearing? Are you mostly wearing your youngest, your 4th?
Yeah, so mostly the 4th, and then also my 3-year-old still, especially if we're out walking or something, or evenings when he is just complete chaos and cannot calm down. I'm like, hey, you're gonna go on my back for a minute. And usually within 3 to 5 minutes, he will just get down, go to bed, and just completely peaceful. So those are the primary times when I use it with him.
That's an amazing way to use carriers. I mean, I feel like I took advantage of that when they were a little bit younger, but I don't feel like it comes to mind as a tool right away for parents as to help our children emotionally regulate. So I love hearing that from you.
Yeah, it's been helpful, and sometimes I forget, and then we get to a boiling point where we're both so frustrated, and then I'm like, let's try this, and it almost always works, and so quickly too.
Would you be willing to give us an overview of the different carriers out there or the most popular styles?
Yeah, of course. So there are so many, obviously, but I'll start by just giving some names. So stretchy wraps, buckle carriers, woven wraps are starting to become more popular. They're in the US, like they've been popular in Europe and other places forever, but they're starting to gain popularity here a little bit more. And then there are like mid-eyes, half buckles, which kind of give a little bit of the buckle carrier convenience factor, but with the adjustability of a wrap. And then, there's the hiking specific carriers, ring slings. So all of those are non-bohemo, which are a really good option for people who don't like a waistband or if you're pregnant and don't want any pressure on your belly. Yeah, there's a bunch of different options and all can be fantastic, but I don't know if you want me to like dive into what, when, or any of that.
Yeah, if you want to go a little bit more deep on a few of them.
So I guess I'll just like do stretchy wraps and woven wraps a little bit together. So stretchy wraps and woven wraps are both one big long piece of fabric. The difference is that a stretchy wrap is stretchy. So it's going to have stretch either in all directions or in just one, but it provides typically less support than you'd get with a woven, but it's often more lightweight. It's just kind of that thing that a lot of people gravitate towards with a newborn because you put it on and then you can just pop baby in and out easily. And after you get the one basic carry down, it's pretty simple. Whereas with woven wraps, there's no stretch. It's, a very firm piece of fabric and it can take a lot longer to figure out how to tighten it properly around your baby. Some people just really excel at it, like right off the bat, and other people, myself included. The first time I grabbed a woven wrap, I was like, what in the world? But I didn't break it in. So there's different things that you learn with woven wraps. If you have a really thick, stiffer fabric, it's going to be harder to work with. And so those are two options that the stretchy wrap is basically just mostly that newborn period or a little bit outside of that, but it's not going to be something that's supportive for long periods. Whereas a woven wrap is going to offer you front, hip, back carries. You can do a single layer of fabric over baby. You can do so much with a woven wrap and it can essentially last. I mean, I could pick up my husband with a woven wrap if I really wanted to. So it's a lot more supportive in general. And then buckle carriers are one of those that just about everyone knows about. If you look at any TV show that has baby wearing, they typically are using a buckle carrier. Unfortunately, most of them use narrow-based buckle carriers, which aren't as supportive for parents or the baby. So there are a lot of options out there that are going to provide better support for parent and baby. But in general, it's just a carrier that has, a structured waistband. It could be structured. There's apron or waterfall. So some of them are a lot lighter waistbands and then some are a lot thicker, more stiff, supportive. And it just depends on what you want. But a lot of them have padded shoulder straps and, all of like the creature comforts that a lot of people are like, oh, this is easy. I just put it on and it's, simple. And
What
then
do
like
you
I
mean by
mentioned
the
earlier,
narrow?
So most people are familiar with Baby Bjorn and particularly the Baby Bjorn Mini, which is the carrier that if you put a baby into it, their legs are just naturally going to fall straight down. There's no support for the pelvis, so it's not supporting from knee to knee on both sides of the baby, and that can potentially there's more and more research that's coming in. And I mean, if you talk to OTs or anyone who has spent extensive time with babies and seen babies that are in those narrow base carriers a lot, there's a lot of tension that can arise from it. There's the potential, it's not proven, but there is the potential for, impacts like hip dysplasia or just hip issues later in life that can come on because that hip socket doesn't develop as deeply because baby's legs aren't in a proper position. Okay. Whereas other carriers will allow for adaptability. So it's going to support them no matter the age.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. Sorry if I got a little crazy there.
That was good.
But yeah, it's not just buckle carriers. Like it can happen in a variety of carriers, but I feel like those are the one that typically you either have narrow-based or adaptability to your growing child.
Okay.
And then I guess, so There's ring slings. I guess I should have mentioned those along with stretchy wraps. And they're just a long piece of fabric, but with rings on one end. They're very simple, very easy to use, but all of the weight is on one shoulder. So it's not the most, ergonomic and long-term comfort for the wearer, but it is a really great option. And I personally like it for shorter periods or when baby's smaller, but it can be great when a toddler is just really needing your attention and wanting up and down a million times. So those are a good quick option. And then you've got the med-eyes I kind of mentioned before, are that in between with a woven wrap or a buckle carrier. They either have a tie waistband or a buckle waistband, which then it would be considered a half buckle, but they give you that wrap feel around your shoulders. And, if you're really petite or if you're plus size, there's no worrying about whether the buckles, like the straps, are going to be too short or too long. It's just the perfect fit no matter what your body is like, which I really love.
Cool. I haven't heard of that brand, or like that, not brand, but that style before. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoy them. They're one of my favorites, just that adjustability. And I also find the fabric itself just lends for a little extra moldability and support for the baby, which they sometimes like better too. It's the only way my son would fall asleep was a woven wrap or a med-eye. He did not want to go to bed in a buckle carrier for some reason.
Okay. And is there med-eye brands that you like?
Yeah, there's tons. I mean, Hope and Plum has them, Girasol, Diddy Mouse, Lenny Lamb. I mean, there are so many out there, and I haven't really found one that I hate. So
Okay.
they're all pretty awesome.
Good. Yeah, that's good that you just threw a few names out there for people they can look at.
Yeah, and med-eyes or half buckles. I mean, that half buckle is nice because you get that quick buckle on the waistband, and they're typically a little more supportive.
Okay. Well, is there any other carrier that we missed that you would want to talk a little more about?
I mean, there is the Onbu Hemo that I kind of talked about, and then there's the hiking specific, like the structured hiking packs. And those, I mean, they say 6 months. They don't tend to support a baby until they're actually supporting themselves. So they do a 6-month minimum, and a lot of people are like, oh, my baby's 6 months, I can use it. In reality, you'd probably want to be waiting until your baby's actually sitting themselves up, which means, typically we say sitting unassisted would be sitting there playing with a toy and able to maintain that for a little bit of time. But I mean, it's hard because they're all so different and there's different levels of support in there for the baby. But typically that's what sitting unassisted means. And it's what you in general would want to look for. It's just kind of hard because, a lot of outdoorsy people are like, I want to use this carrier, I'm excited about it. And their baby may or may not, sit at 6 months. It might be 8, 9, 10 months. So it's a little bit tricky with that and the level of support in hiking carriers.
And so could you speak a little bit to kind of what those manufacturers are, why they're saying 6 months for those carriers?
Yeah, so a lot of carriers will say 6 months because that's the average time that a baby starts to sit unassisted.
Okay. But is it kind of saying like if their face might fall into the carrier or they're just going to be too wobbly? Is that kind of what they're thinking?
So 6 months or sitting unassisted because if they can't support their body, there's potential for a number of things, including adding significant tension for the baby, because if they're trying to force themselves up and they can't quite do it yet, they don't have the muscle tone, they might be straining muscles on one side, which, could show itself later with, different, like it could even just be like them being extra agitated or fussy. And you're like, why are you so fussy? And you don't know that they're just experiencing a lot of tension. Or, there is the potential for positional asphyxiation if they can't support themselves and their neck is slumping. There is that potential that they're, and they're behind you, so you can't see them. There is a higher potential when they can't sit unassisted that if they slump forward, they can't support their airways, whether they're awake or not. If they are actually sitting unassisted, that underlying muscular, like the development of their muscles is different compared to a baby that can't support themselves. So even if they do have, a little bit more slumping, it's less likely because they have that the muscles are developed more at that point to allow them to protect their airways more.
Thank you for explaining that. That gives me lots of insight. Would you share a bit more about safe positioning when carrying babies and what we need to think about I don't know if it's pretty consistent through the ages or if you want to break it down into the different age groups.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to break it up a little bit. I mean, there are general things that you always want to see, but if you've heard of ticks, which is like that tight insight, like all of that stuff, it's more geared towards newer newborns under 4 months who are on the front. But in general, under 4 months, it's the highest risk for positional asphyxiation and suffocation. So you want to ensure that they're nice, high, and tight. And by tight, I mean snug. Like the carrier shouldn't be, when you take a breath, it shouldn't feel like you're squishing your baby or you can't take a full breath because it's so tight. It should just be snug so that baby is fully supported and not slumping. And then always in sight, just meaning that, especially if you're front wearing, you're a new parent, you've got your baby on the front, you want to be able to see them both up higher because it's better for your body and it's going to make it more supportive for you, but it also ensures that you can see their face more easily, and that fabric should never be covering their faces. That's one of those things. Osprey actually has a soft structured carrier, and I may have made a video about them because they had all of this imagery of these teeny tiny newborns with their faces completely covered, and on top of the panel being way too high on the baby's head, they also had the headrest up, and the headrest was a completely, like, you shouldn't do it even if you have a breathable mesh. I mean, I think it's a little dependent, but especially with a newborn, regardless, you shouldn't. But to top it off, their headrest, you couldn't even breathe through it. Like it was completely unable to breathe in it. I was just like, no, like babies need to breathe. We gotta let them breathe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those things where I'm like, always make sure you can see your baby's face. Those hoods are not designed to completely cover up your baby's head. If I'm using it, it's when they're older on the back or on the front with one side up so I can still see my baby's face and they're getting plenty of airflow. Or, I might hold it up for a little bit if it's like super windy and I'm just creating a shield for the wind, but I'm not putting it over their head, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. That's good.
Sorry, I get a little passionate about that one.
No, I saw your video. I thought that was great. And then I think you said they changed the photos.
They did, yes, thank goodness.
Good. Oh, Osprey.
Yeah. Well, it's hard because, they've never, I think a lot of companies go into making products for parents when they've never done that before and they don't know what to look for, especially when it comes to newborns, because it's just such a delicate stage. And yeah, they should have, in general, companies manufacturing stuff for newborns should be actually reaching out to people to figure out if it's safe, in my opinion. Again, the position, which is just that support that I talked about under the bottom and out to the knees, should be across the board any age. But it does become less of a necessity for hip development specifically once they're around a year old. And that's just because the hips have basically developed at that point. So while it's more comfortable for your child and for you because it helps to distribute the weight better to have that knee to knee coverage, it's not, if you put your 1.5-year-old into a buckle carrier and it's just hitting, a little bit before the knee or, halfway up their thigh or something, it's not that it's going to hurt them. It's just that it might not be as comfortable and it won't support your body as well. But in general, you just want to keep them, well supported straight up. The carriers should be coming up to at least the bottom of the armpit. So if they have their arms out and stuff, that's completely fine. But you don't want to see that panel going significantly lower than, you don't want to see it really at all lower than the armpits because it just gives them the ability to potentially push out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. I remember wearing my first son in a carrier with an insert, and I remember it being super uncomfortable and thinking like, oh, I think it's more natural for their legs to be straight down. What you were explaining is the narrow before. So this is really, I like hearing from you about how it's important even for newborns to have the M position.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because with newborns, they're so curled up often, and you actually, that's good. Like you want to maintain that position, but you don't want to force their legs apart. So an M is going to look a little different as compared, an older child or baby compared to a newborn because a newborn, it's going to be this really tight where their knees are up and their legs might even kind of curve in instead of being straight down. But yeah, if you have them fully dangling, like the knee, the bottom and the knee aren't in, so the bottom should be below the knees. If you have it the other way, it's putting a lot of extra pressure on their hips. And it can, if you're wearing a lot that way and you're swaddling, doing different things, it has the potential to not allow that hip socket to develop properly.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I get asked quite a bit about the gear that we use while on international trips, especially about our lightweight playpen that we use. We'll bring that into the rock climbing crag or hike it into a beach and really use it for daytime naps anywhere. And so I put together a travel gear list, and I'm really hoping that this doesn't just cover like basic things that you would find on any travel list, but it's unique to the fact that these are specific things that might not be deemed as travel. And they are things that we have used over the last 5 years of traveling with our kids. So I've also included my kids' favorite activities for the plane and for road tripping as well. We have been really enjoying house sitting lately, and so I also put all the details in there. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it is all linked in the show notes, so you'll find the link there. As a somewhat crunchy mom, I care about the fibers my kids wear. I haven't switched everything over yet, but the one material I am always looking for is merino wool. It comes from sheep and it's processed into fabric that's naturally quick drying, breathable, and temperature regulating. For base layers, especially ones my kids wear repeat on trips, merino wool is my first choice. So I wanted to tell you all about Wee Woolies. They are a Canadian company that specializes in kids' base layers, making ultra soft wool from New Zealand sheep. Their clothing comes in many fun colors, keeping kids warm when it's cold and cool when it's hot. For Let's Go Outside listeners, use the code Let's Go Outside to get 10% off your next Wee Woolies order. The link is in the show notes. I think we often talk to people who say, my baby doesn't like this, or the carrier is not, my kid's not a fan of this. And I'd be curious if you have any encouragement for moms that say that.
Yeah, so over 4 babies, like from my experience, and then also wearing other people's babies and talking to other people, I think that so I don't think that every baby automatically loves the carrier. I've heard some people say that every baby loves it. And it's like, maybe I don't even know if should's the right word, but no, they don't. Like some babies are in stages where they do not like it. But I think it comes down to a few different things that parents don't always realize, and one is the fit of the carrier. I see a lot of people say, my baby hates this carrier and it's too tight, and then I look and they're wearing a stretchy wrap really loose and the baby doesn't actually feel supported. Their legs are kind of dangling. They're just kind of like hanging there, and it's like, well, there's probably more to it than my baby hates the carrier. If you snug that up, they might feel more supported and it might be a lot more comfortable for them. Or it's just the type of carrier. And like my son, I had one carrier, he would not let me put him in it. Like I would literally bring that panel up, I'd sit him down, bring the panel up, and he would just start screaming his head off. And I mean, I know what I'm doing. Like, I know that he had a proper fit, but he would not. I could not even do a demo of how to put that carrier on because he would not do it. So there are just some carriers that babies don't like, and it can be really frustrating if, you have one carrier that one baby loves and you have it for the next baby and they hate it. But sometimes that just is what it is. And then muscle tension is another one that I think we really don't put enough, like we don't concentrate on enough, especially in the baby wearing space, because if babies have a lot of underlying tension or, reflux pain and stuff, certain positions and certain carriers are going to aggravate that. And if you work through some of that tension before, or, I mean, honestly, I used to do that with my 4th baby. I would go to put her in the carrier. She would start fussing and super upset. And I would either in the carrier or before putting it on, depending on how upset she was, I would just go through and do, some gentle massage to release tension in different areas. And she had this one leg that was always so tense and I could not wiggle it up. And I would just slowly work with her and then I'd wiggle it up and she'd loosen up. And then I put her in the carrier and just totally happy. So, I think that's one of those things that a lot of people forget is, they just might be experiencing some muscle tension. And then if it's not too much, I'll do one other, which is kind of a weird one. but it's needing to go potty. That actually, I didn't realize that that could be a thing until I started doing elimination communication with my fourth. And now I look back on times where my babies were just furious, did not want to be in the carrier. And I was like, what is going on? I take them out, they're dry, I put them back in, and then they just stay angry. And, 10, 15 minutes later, I'd realize, oh, now they've gone in their diaper. And I'm like, oh, you think about it, if they're in the baby carrier and they need to go to the potty, like that is a lot of pressure to push against. I mean, if you put on a diaper and sit in a chair, it is basically impossible to go to the bathroom. And so while we can train them to go, I think we forget that it is harder. And even if you want to use diapers, you don't want to put them over the potty, I would just give them that space to get out of the carrier, go potty in their diaper, change them, and then put them back in the carrier.
Wow. That's so good. So you mentioned 3 ways then is kind of test out different carriers. Number 2, muscle tension. And number 3, try going to the potty first or going in their diaper or something. That's really good to keep in mind. Would you say for someone, is there any carrier that you would recommend or a couple carriers that you could say start here if you're finding for people, many people like these carriers?
Yes. So I'd say buckle. It's hard because there's such a range, but I do find there's certain ones. The Tula Free to Grow is just easy to get hands on and it grows well with babies. And I find a lot of people do enjoy it, but it does have a little bit of a stiffer waistband. The Lenny Light is a comparable carrier. I mean, it's way more adjustable and it actually adjusts further out, but it's actually easy to get. It just can feel intimidating because it's not, in a store. But that is one that it has that soft feel of a woven wrap, but it is a actual buckle carrier. And I find a lot of babies appreciate that softness of it, and it has a softer waistband, so it can be a little better on people's pelvic floor, but it still is supportive, which is nice. And then ring slings are kind of hit or miss. I find people either really love them or really don't love them. But if you have an older baby who is just really wants to push away, you don't want a forward face, or you just need something for on your hip, grabbing a ring sling can be a good option. Once you get it down, they're amazing for those shorter periods, in my opinion, but it can take time. And like I said, a lot of people either love them or hate them. I hated them to start. Absolutely hated them. It took until my 3rd baby before I was like, okay, I kind of actually really like this for certain things. But yeah, I'd say it's so dependent on the person, and it's so hard to throw out certain things. It's well, what about climate? What about this? What about that?
Yeah, totally. I found that with the ring sling too. And I think it's that one I feel is kind of a big learning curve for us, as moms, to try and figure out. It's not you can kind of shift it so much. And I found with a smaller baby, it was so much harder than almost with an older baby, you could get used to it and practice more and kind of feel more it's a bit more flexibility and you have a bit more forgiveness versus trying to do it with a tiny baby, I found.
No, I definitely agree. And yeah, with my first baby, I had been gifted 2 ring slings, and I think I tried it about 15 times and I was like, this is ridiculous. I hate it. And then I didn't try again until she was maybe 6 to 8 months old. And then it was okay, I can use this for certain things, but it was never love until later.
Yeah. And they look so pretty. So you just I feel a lot of the moms won't have that on their registry, or they want one, or that's kind of what I did with my first. And then I was I don't love this right now, but I find it so fun for what you were saying earlier, for the emotional regulation. When my son was 3, that was my favorite time to wear the ring sling.
Yeah. Well, and I find too, the fabric makes a huge difference, because I think a lot of us get linen that's not broken in, and it's just so hard to use, and it's really overwhelming to add that on top. But I will say there are brands that have ring slings that are so much easier to use from the beginning, and I am sometimes really curious what my experience would have been like if I'd had, like Hope and Plum makes some that are really easy to work with. Tula has like the woven Didymos. Like there are some that are cotton and it's just a different feel to it. And it's so much more intuitive and easy. And I'm really curious sometimes if I had had one of those, if it would have gone a lot better or if it would have still just been so confusing on how to get the seat and how to tighten. And it definitely does feel like a bit more of a learning curve as compared to other options.
Yeah. That's a really good note. I never thought of that, of just like the linen being not worked in though. And I can see from your Instagram you have a lot of carriers, and so I think that is a good point to make, is just like trying different fabrics and trying different carriers. Yeah, I think that's so wise to be able to just try our friends' carriers or test out something from the thrift store before we buy an expensive carrier or something. That's a really good point.
Yeah, well, and I'm hoping that more and more libraries will open up. I'm trying to open one myself where people can just go in and actually feel it, because when you're searching online, it can be so intimidating and you have no idea what it's going to feel like on your body or like just what the fabric is like. So yeah, being able to try friends, or like you said, that's where all of mine first came from that I bought, were consignment stores. And that was just such a good way to try out options either in store before buying or even just for a lower price to then take home and try.
That's awesome. Good. I actually haven't heard of libraries before, so that's like something good to keep in mind too. Is that something that you have heard of happens in cities?
Yeah, a lot of cities a lot of cities had them with COVID. A lot of them went out of business or stopped practicing, but it does seem like they're starting to come back. And a lot of doulas actually will have a stash on hand of different ones. So if you have a doula that you used for your birth or postpartum, sometimes just reaching out to them and being like, hey, do you happen to have some carriers that I could try, might end up working in your favor.
Cool. So I have a lot of moms listening that like to hike and backpack, and I believe you like to hike.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. So would you share if there's any carriers you've used that you like for hiking? I mean, whether it's even carrying them on the front or the back in a traditional like backpacking carrier, I would be curious to hear from you.
Yeah, so I do find, so I'll give you some, but I also will say that I find a lot of people think that they have to get a big structured hiking backpack. Yeah, if they want to do any hiking. And I just want to say, no, 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 you don't have to. And I find a lot of people actually find them very uncomfortable, because if you can't go get it actually fitted on your body, it's like going backpacking with some random pack that isn't sized to you. It just doesn't always work, doesn't usually work out. So
Yeah.
unless you're like going in and trying it and getting it fitted to you, I would be cautious of jumping right into that before a big hike. Honestly, soft structured carriers, the buckle carriers, tend to be a really good option because they load that weight really close to your body, as opposed to a structured hiking pack, which, kind of pushes it further back and away from you. You can load way more stuff, which I love with a structured hiking pack. But if you're not going very far and you can throw on a fanny pack and your soft structured, your buckle carrier, I find a lot of people find themselves much more comfortable. Some of my favorites have honestly just, it depends on the age and stage, but Tula has a lot of good ones. They even have bigger, big kid ones. And Lilla Baby, if you want something that's a little bit cheaper, they really push their complete carriers in the new Elevate, which it's okay. It works good for like the younger baby period, and then more so again after around a year old. I don't find after about 4 to 6 months they tend to be a good fit until baby fits wide seat, but then it's a nice supportive carrier. They tend to have some pockets. They have a toddler carrier as well. Kinder Pack is another one that it's just a good, comfortable buckle carrier that, you can get for a number of different size, different child sizes. I've done a lot of hiking with my Lenny Light. Trying to think, I'm looking around at which ones are currently laying on the ground because we just did stuff.
Yeah.
The Trail Magic, I love putting on if you're, doing a hike where you need to pack a lot and you only have one kid that's going to go up, and for short periods, you could do the Trail Magic. Or if you have a structured hiking pack and you're going to give either your baby, so I will say, even if I had one child and I was using a structured hiking pack, I would still get a Trail Magic, because sometimes they want to be close and it's so much easier to put them in there than to hold them in your arms. Or if you want to nurse in the carrier, you can just pop them into the Trail Magic and keep hiking. But yeah, no, I think they all have their purposes. And yeah, I'd say in general, buckle carrier or a structured hiking pack is most often the best though.
Yeah, okay, cool. When my firstborn was really little, we just used a buckle carrier and I wore him on my front and wore my 40-liter pack on my backpack with like the lightest weight stuff. I was still pretty early postpartum and I was sweaty, but that was just so much more like, I mean, I couldn't have put him, he was so little, I wouldn't have put him in a
Yeah.
full structure carrier, but I still have worn my kids in buckle straps up a whole mountain when they're 2 years old, if you can get over the sweaty factor, I feel like it's still such a good option. And I think like exactly what you say, like there might be a mindset around it of just like, this is made for hiking, so we need like the big Osprey or Deuter packs, and those do have a time and place. But what you're saying too, like the other carriers also are great. And I love talking to my kid when they're on my front and we're hiking together or on my back too. I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
I was gonna say
So
I love
thank you.
handing snacks. Just being, how you doing?
Yeah.
Find those structured hiking packs, like you said too, but the sweat factor is real. That's definitely something to consider. But my goodness, the buckle carriers can be so much more comfortable when you don't need to carry a lot of stuff. And I mean, even my 4-year-old, like when she was 3, she was the size of my then 4.5, 5-year-old. It was so much like I could put her into a buckle carrier and carry her for 4 or 5 miles, no problem. But if I put her into one of those structured hiking packs, I mean, my back was killing me. And I would literally come home with bruises on my body from the structured hiking pack. And it was well fitted. Like I tried, I have 5 or 6, but it's just like you can only go so far with that much weight in that thing before it just becomes really uncomfortable.
And what you said too, like it is like you want it fitted to your body, but even if it is, the weight is further back. And often you have other things in that carrier. And so I would agree. I find that it isn't always sustainable long term or like for a longer hike. So that is exactly like why the Trail Magic is another really great option too when they're a little bit older. I love that you mentioned that. Would you touch on breastfeeding before we go to our final questions? I know that you are a fan of breastfeeding in carriers, and I feel like that's something that I've tried more with my second baby, but I would like to get more into. Very inspired. If you would share a little bit, maybe anything to keep in mind or tips for breastfeeding in a carrier.
Yeah. So first off, the chest size, like breast size matters. But I hear all the time from people who are like, well, I can't do it because mine are too big. But then on creators who post how to do it with a very large chest, they get oh, I can't do it because I'm too small. And I think everyone thinks that everyone else has it easier and like their chest size can't do it. But I do find that just about anyone, there are obviously exceptions. But I mean, I've worked with moms that have an egg cup, like they have a very large chest and they were able to successfully breastfeed in the carriers. So I think it's just finding the tips and tricks that work for you, and in general lowering them is a big part of it. But for people who can, lifting is another big piece of it, especially those with larger chests. Being able to raise the breast to baby makes a huge difference. Like you need that space where you loosen the carrier enough that you have space. But you also need to be raising, because I hear that too. They're like, my nipples are at my belly button. Like, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, you gotta raise them up. And typically, if you have a larger chest, you have the ability to have more movement. For myself, I was like, so before breastfeeding, I was as small as they come, like a cup, barely. But then when I had my baby, I had severe oversupply, and I mean, I couldn't keep them in an F cup. Okay. So I've experienced the range of sizes, and it really was about creating space, lowering baby, lifting if you could. Now that, I'm a lot smaller again, I do have to get baby basically right to nipple height, which I think I don't know if it's the angle or baby's head size or what, but I think a lot of people get this impression that baby's not as low as they are in my videos. And so I created one video that I tried to have like perfectly straight on to like show how low I'm getting baby. how I'm holding them. Because I think that is a common misconception. Like people will lower it a little bit and they're like, my baby feels so low. Like this isn't possible. But then they're forgetting to lift, or they're forgetting like this, like once you do it enough times, it gets comfortable and it gets easier. But those first times, I remember with my second baby, I had been breastfeeding my first in a carrier for a year. I thought this is going to be easy. I've got this. And then I got my second baby, and I think she was 3 months old or older before I was like, oh, okay, I can actually go for a walk and breastfeed in the carrier again. Because it was just, I forgot when you have such a small baby, how far you have to get them down there. But also, you know, you take into account head control and all of that. I think it's easy to see people do it who are confident and practiced, like I thankfully am now, and not realize like they're getting baby down, they're supporting baby. Like there's a lot that goes into it that it's hard to kind of show and explain. But I would just say practice, 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 and lowering more than you think you need to, getting baby latched on, and then holding them with one hand, and you can tighten back up with the other hand, like switching off so that you're supported still. But yeah, just like lower a little more than you think you need to, and wearing easy access. Like I'm currently wearing this sweater that has, you know, a nice deep V. Like having that for easy access makes a huge difference too, where you're not like trying to pull up a huge sweater between the two of you or any of that.
Yeah, that's good. And do you find that that works best in a wrap carrier, or have you been able to breastfeed in any carrier?
I actually find ring slings or buckle carriers tend to be the easiest for people. And then half buckles and wovens, once people are really confident with the carrier, can be super easy as well. It's just getting confident enough with the carrier that you can loosen, hold with one hand, get baby latched on, or, you know, knowing to like hold the fabric between your knees if you need to use both hands to latch baby on, which I find is typically in those first months. So it might, you know, it might just be better for, if you're really struggling with it, I'd say most people should wait till like 4 or 5 months, and then they'll likely find that they're having an easier time. And it also won't be as intensive with safety, because when you're nursing a baby under that, you have to be very mindful of what you're doing and not just pop them on and forget about it. You need to be aware and fully engaged. And I think that often gets missed in the conversation of breastfeeding in the carrier, and people just see it as this, oh, I latch them on and then do whatever I feel like and I don't have to pay attention. And especially in those first few months, if you're going to breastfeed in the carrier in the first few months, like it really needs to be mindful and engaged and paying attention to your baby.
That's good. I mean, I think there's definitely the first couple of months where you're not even able to do it one-handed, so or without any hands. So definitely work up to that. That's really good. Hadn't heard those tips before. And shout out to your Wild Lore sweater, the breastfeeding sweater.
Yeah, I love her stuff.
Yeah, Carissa makes amazing stuff out of Nilsson, BC. So if anyone's looking for a breastfeeding hoodie, that one is awesome.
And it stands up so well outside.
Okay, that's so good to hear. So I have 3 last questions as we end out today's podcast. Firstly, tell us your favorite moment outside with your kids, if you can think of one.
I feel bad saying it because my husband wasn't there, but honestly, our backpacking trip was one of my favorite things ever. It was the most wonderful. Like, it was hard, don't get me wrong. It was very hard, but we got up to the top of the mountain. We didn't know if we were done yet. We kept thinking, oh, this is it. And it was never it. And then we get up to the top, we're exhausted and just so dragged out. And I turned around and I was like, Caitlin, look, like, get up here, look. And it was just, the sun was setting over Mount Rainier. I think it was Mount Rainier. Or no, I don't know which mount it was, but it was just this beautiful mountain with the sun setting. It was just like this field of wildflowers. Like, it was the most picturesque moment. The kids started cheering. Like, it was just so beautiful, and that will like forever live in my memory.
That's so good. I think the kids know how hard everyone works for moments like that.
Yeah. And it was just like they were jumping up and down, and before that they couldn't even like do 2 more steps, and we were like, getting them to go with M&Ms. It was like, here's another candy, just make it to that tree, 1 more candy.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it's hard when you don't even know when the end is too, right? You're also like, when are we going to be there? I need an end. Thank you for sharing that. Would you share a unique tip you have for moms that want to explore or go outside more, if that's related to baby care, like baby wearing or anything? I would love to hear what you have to say.
I mean, yeah, I do think that baby wearing can make it easier, but I'd also say just like if you can, finding someone. I have done a ton of solo hiking with my kids, but especially when I first started, it was super intimidating because I did it all the time by myself before kids, but then after you have a baby, I feel like often you get this protective, like, and I was really struggling with anxiety personally, but I just felt so scared about, getting out there with my baby. And so I finally found someone else who had a baby around the same age. And we just went hiking. And, even after just doing that a couple times with someone else or going with my husband, even just having someone else there, it made it feel so much better. And then I was able to like confidently go take my others, go take them out by myself and feel comfortable doing that.
That's really a valuable tip and so good. Find someone with a baby similar age or kid the similar age. It really does. And it helps. I find it helps me get out of the house. I can't cancel. It's harder to cancel somebody else. As we close out, Cassidy, would you share where we can get more resources from you, stay connected? And I know it's sometimes hard to understand what we're talking about on a podcast. So just like the visual aspect of it too, let us know your resources.
I just have like my pages, which is just Let's Talk Baby Wearing across, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And then I have a website that has a little bit, and I'm trying to really build that up so that it has a lot more resources for people to find information more easily. And I have a couple guides and stuff that I've put out, and I'm working on a course which will hopefully be out before long for like getting babies onto your back and being able to feel comfortable and confident doing that. And we actually have a community there so that people can, do fit checks and see how things are fitting and get comfortable with actually getting back and forth from me and my friend Lucy, who actually owns Babu Baby Carriers. So she's been awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Cassidy. Thank you for coming on the show today.
And thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. Hey, thanks for listening today. I'd love to invite you to join our Facebook group, the Let's Go Outside Facebook group. It's where the conversation keeps going with other moms. We kind of chat about what our favorite places are. I like to encourage people. It's just a really cool place to meet more moms. So you'll find the link to that group in the show notes, along with everything we mentioned today, whether that's gear or the places that we like to explore. So thank you for being here and being a part of this community.